your host, Brittany Baker, and welcome back to Season 2 of the Get Schools on Public Education podcast. Our Dear New Leader series is all about educating elected officials on key charter school issues. As promised in last week's episode, today we're talking about the Charter Schools Program, also known as the CSP. It is the nation's only source of dedicated federal funding to support the creation, expansion, and replication of public charter schools. We have two guests today who will share more information about the program. Fiona Sheridan-McIver, she is the Director of Policy at the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools, and Preston Castille, he is the President and CEO of Helix Community Schools located in Louisiana. We're going to start with Fiona, who's going to talk a little bit more about why the Charter Schools Program exists.
The CSP is the only federal funding to help meet that need out in communities. And it includes several competitive grant programs that address different needs related to growing a strong charter school community that serves kids well. And at its core, I think that's essentially what the purpose of the program is. It's to serve kids well. The CSP exists to help expand opportunities for students, especially those who historically are furthest from opportunity. And the CSP does this by providing critical funding to address the challenges of opening and operating new charter schools around the country.
The parent demand for charter schools has increased, and the CSP plays an important role in supporting the growth of high-quality public charter schools.
CSP is a critical part of the public school funding ecosystem because it addresses the needs and gaps that are specific to launching a new charter school. So, as public schools, charter schools do receive a per pupil funding allocation in the same way that district schools do. Although I'm sure you know that in many states, charter schools receive less funding on average than district schools, often because of lack of access to local funding. But new charter schools don't have access to this per pupil funding until students actually enroll. So there's no resources to support the school before the first day, essentially. If you're a leader trying to launch a school, you need to hire and train teachers. You need to select curriculum, find a school building, buy furniture, technology, and supplies, and just a whole host of other expenses before children can show up on that first day.
And this is where the CSP comes in. Enacted in 1994 by President Bill Clinton, this provided new schools with short-term funding to help cover the cost of starting up, serving as one-time funds that can only be used for non-sustained costs.
Over the years, some additional sub-programs have been added to the CSP to address the changing needs of the charter school community as it has grown and evolved over the years. But I think when you boil it down, the CSP is really just about bridging that gap between getting your charter approved and being ready to open a school that's actually prepared to serve students on day one. And what's great about the CSP is that it's sort of a small but mighty program. At its most recent funding level, it was funded at just $440 million, and that's less than 1% of federal spending on K-12 education. But it really has a significant impact on the communities that charter schools serve.
Within the Charter Schools Program, there are different types of grants. Each one provides support in a different area for charter schools. Let's start with the grants to state entities.
We have the grants to state entities, which make up the largest pot of money within the CSP. So these grants can be awarded to state education agencies, governors, state charter school boards, or state charter support or associations, which then in turn make sub-grant awards to new or expanding schools. The second big program is the grants for replication and expansion of high-quality charter schools, which go to charter management organizations or CMOs. In order to receive a grant under this competition, a CMO must show evidence of success in improving student outcomes, and they can use the funds to help them open new schools or to expand existing schools to serve more students.
Let's dive into an example of the grants for replication and expansion. Helix Aviation Academy is a K-12 public charter school in Louisiana, and they received this grant in 2023. Preston Castille, the president and CEO of Helix Community Schools, shares more.
It's uniquely located on the Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport. We actually now have two campuses. One on the airport, we have a 10,000 square foot hangar, literally, where aircraft taxi in and out of our school. It is one of the neatest things that you ever see. I'm not sure how many people went to school where airplanes literally show up at the back door of your school, but that's what happens to us.
Now that's a sight to see. Let's learn more about how these funds have impacted the school.
We teach the core courses, but we add something extra. We create an opportunity for children to be exposed to and learn about the aviation profession. This past year, we've operated just like any other normal school, but we added this year a certified flight instructor. So we have a pilot that's now on our staff. He's teaching ground school to all of our ninth grade students. We will continue to build upon that. Students who are interested will literally learn to fly airplanes. And when you think about where we're located in Scotlandville, Louisiana, in a fairly poor community where children only saw airplanes flying in the sky, now they get to learn about them, touch them, design them, learn to fly them themselves. It is an incredible experience, and frankly, one we could have never achieved without the support of the CSP grant.
And at the core of the Charter Schools program is making sure these schools have the tools to meet the needs of students and families. To recap, we talked about the grants to state entities, grants for replication and expansion. Let's kick it back to Fiona to explain another type of CSP grant.
And third, we have what are called developer grants. So in CSP parlance, a developer is someone who's working to launch a new charter school. So in a state where no state entity, that's the first big bucket of grants, the state entity grant. So if you are located in a state that doesn't have a state entity grant, you can apply directly to the federal government to receive funds.
Now let's talk about charter schools and the challenges many of them face when it comes to accessing facilities.
Access to appropriate school facilities and affordable facilities financing is one of the biggest barriers to charter school growth. So 2 sub-programs were added to the CSP to help address these challenges. So first we have Credit Enhancement for Charter School Facilities Program, or Credit Enhancement, we call it for short, which provides support for charter schools to acquire or renovate facilities. And second, we have the State Charter Schools Facilities Incentive Grant, which provides matching funds for states to provide per pupil funding for charter schools facilities. And then finally, we have the National Dissemination Grants. So the key purpose of these grants is to increase quality throughout the entire charter school sector by studying and disseminating best practices that are related to charter school operations and management.
So how can lawmakers better support the CSP to ensure it continues to benefit students and families? Here are 2 ways: increase the funds and the flexibility of the program.
I think the 2 key ways that lawmakers can support the charter school community is increasing funding to put more dollars into classrooms that are serving students well. And the second way is supporting greater flexibility within the program so that it can adapt to meet the changing needs of the sector. So this includes flexibility to shift funds between sub-programs to address changing demand from year to year, flexibility to support new initiatives like a pre-planning grant for educators who want to launch schools, as is proposed by the Empower Charter School Educators to Lead Act, flexibility to support more facilities initiatives in states under the State Facilities Incentive Grant, as I mentioned before, and that's proposed by the Equitable Access to School Facilities Act.
To learn more about the Equitable Access to School Facilities Act and the Empower Charter School Educators to Lead Act, visit our website at publiccharters.org. Supporting the charter schools program can make a major impact on a student's life. Just listen to Preston as he talks about how small things for kids can start as a dream and go on to become so much more.
I remember as a kid, I don't know if you did this, but we'd make paper airplanes, and we had our little designs and we'd fly them, and it was just kind of a dream. You made paper airplanes. But to know those little kids who now make the little paper airplanes may now be designing real airplanes in the future and flying real airplanes. So it's not just fantasy anymore.
We want to thank our guest, Fiona Sheridan-McIver. She is the Director of Policy at the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools, and Preston Castille, the President and CEO of Helix Community Schools in Louisiana. We want to thank them both for sharing their knowledge of the Charter Schools program with us today. We appreciate you all for listening, and don't forget to tune in next week for our episode on accountability. I'm your host, Brittany Baker, and remember, charter schools are free, public, and open to all.
Produced by Heartcast Media.